I'm excited for this one. This one is going to be very interesting. So, I just rewatched, but sort of for, I think, like the third time in probably like 6 months. So, you can tell I like this movie a lot. I rewatched Curse of the Black Pearl, and I have intentions of finishing the series, but not watching the fifth one because I didn't like it. And I'll probably make a video on the franchise as a whole. But for this episode, I wanted to like talk a little bit about this movie, but also I just wanted to mainly focus on how it relates to Walt Disney and mainly like sort of overarching themes of this movie that make it really good rather than like focusing on the plot, which I did a lot in my Harry Potter reviews. But I think this movie is very instructive because it's from a company that's lost its way, and I think that this movie is like a perfect way for them to find their way back. And I will explain what I mean by that. How should I do this? Should I like briefly summarize the plot, like not go into detail? How should I do this? Um, okay, basically, let's see here. We'll read a tiny plot summary here. So, not the synopsis, but a tiny summary. William Turner, a resourceful young blacksmith, teams up with an eccentric pirate Jack Sparrow to save his love, the governor's daughter, Elizabeth Swann, who had been mistakenly captured by the treacherous Barbarossa, a former ally of Jack, to make a blood sacrifice as to end a curse that has been casted upon him and his crew. Will and Jack steal a ship from the Royal Navy and arrive at Tortuga, a pirate port, where he meets his friend Gibbs and gets an able-bodied crew. They save to sail Elizabeth and take back the Black Pearl. Meanwhile, Barbarossa discovers it's not Elizabeth's blood, but someone else's blood he needs for the sacrifice. Whose blood is it? Alright, so I would say like the first, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes of this where it basically introduces Jack Sparrow as a character is some of the most brilliant introductions to a character I've ever seen. And the reason I say this is it's kind of clear once you watch it a few times. The film starts out with this tagline for Jack Sparrow, who comes onto the movie on a sinking ship, arriving on a harbor. He's basically has no ship, has no crew, he's nothing. And the tagline is, "That's gotta be the worst pirate I've ever seen." And through various quick thinking and sort of acts of physical and mental bravery, let's say, Jack Sparrow manages to outsmart the British and escape. And the tagline is, "That's gotta be the best pirate I've ever seen." And then Commodore Norrington, I think his name is, says, so it would seem. Basically affirming and completing this little mini intro and arc for the character of Jack Sparrow, which I thought was perfect because it introduces him as like a goofball, which he is, but it also clearly shows he's got like the intelligence, the quick thinking, and the physical ability to like outsmart people that are way better than him. And that's a theme that continues. And also about this intro scene, the comedic value is so good, and the performance from Johnny Depp is really irreplaceable. I think there's a few actors that, particularly maybe from franchise movies, that you can't imagine anyone else doing it. Like, they are that person. So, I would say Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp, and like Snape, Alan Rickman. Those are a few that I could not imagine anyone else But there's a few other roles that I strongly think that. And I honestly put probably Jack Sparrow as played by Johnny Depp at the top of that list. Like, it's hard to imagine anyone else bring such personality and such uniqueness to this role. Everything from the way he talks to even things like the way he moves, like, it's so iconic. That little sort of wobbly walk he does that was spoofed by the Lego game. Incredibly iconic. So relating this to Walt Disney, just in the little 30 minutes that we're introduced to this film, I think that Disney could remember this in general. Like, respect the characters you make and make them funny. Like, use humor as sort of a side effect of good writing, rather than sort of degrading your characters for laughs. Sort of, they did that in Marvel, especially towards the end, very tragically to many of their characters. But more so with Pirates of the Caribbean, the lessons Disney should really learn is, what is Pirates of the Caribbean? It's original, it's high budget, it's well written, great actors, directed very, very well. Like, this movie is actually really well directed, and the CGI obviously is old, but in general, it's used only when necessary, and it's mostly shot in the dark, so it looks a lot better than if it was shot in the light. There's so many iconic direction, so many iconic scenes because of the direction in this movie. I'm thinking of from the very first scene of the movie, where a young Elizabeth Swann is on a boat and they basically find Will Turner's body. And things like the female umbrella floating in the water that hits the ship. I feel like that's such an iconic scene, and I even remember it as a kid watching it. I thought that was a very scary scene. But there's a certain beauty to it. Like a woman's umbrella floating in the middle of the ocean after a pirate attack. It's unique. It's kind of haunting in a way. And then there's this other scene that is really beautiful, or a little sequence. It's the sequence of the gold coin falling in slow motion into the chest of gold. I think such a great scene. So things like that, competent director that can make not only well-directed scenes, but iconic scenes, which I feel is so important for a company like Walt Disney that has a heritage of making iconic characters and iconic scenes, iconic music, etc. I think they got to start doing that again. So this all sort of depends on multiple things. It depends on Disney going back to making original content that is enjoyable by all ages, children, young adults, adults, which this movie is. And it also is heavily dependent on not making political movies, and like, don't put your political agenda in the movie, and just allow people to have these blockbuster films that are really high quality, and that are unique. And in this case, it did spawn a franchise, but like, you don't even need to do that. But if it does happen as a happy accident because of its success, go ham with it. Instead of just like rebooting and remaking, or just making endless sequels to established stories for no reason. What else do I have to say about this movie? I wanted to keep this video kind of short, because I just want to talk about a few things that this movie could teach Disney. Oh, another thing. I felt, you know, movies that come out now that are like meant for kids or sort of maybe more fantasy based, they don't like even put in the effort to like make great scenes and like push themselves as filmmakers. And what I mean by that, and what is so impressive about this movie, is the production value. And what I mean specifically by that is they didn't even use like any CGI for the ships, like, you know, to do the scenes. They're real ships. Obviously, they were effects maybe in some parts, but generally they're real ships. They made real battles, and it came out really, really fantastic. So I would say like the Walt Disney Company should push itself to be incredible and like challenge itself as a filmmaking company rather than just like following a template. I think they like tried to make a movie like this with Cruella, but I mean, I never saw it, but I've seen like clips, and from what I can tell, it's just kind of like a drab film that really isn't anything special. So I say they like tried to make something like this, but clearly it wasn't anything insane. Um, I don't remember if I have any other points to make, but I just wanted to make a little video here about Curse of the Black Pearl. I didn't really get into the plot, but safe to say I really loved this movie. It was a big influence on me as a child, which is another added benefit of making these great films from Disney that could be for all ages. I mean, not many people know this about me, but I was and somewhat am still obsessed with the idea of pirates because of this film. I saw this when I was a very young child, probably 5. And ever since I watched it, I always thought like being a pirate and like being on a ship with cannons and fighting was the coolest thing ever. And when I was in middle school, there was a game called Assassin's Creed Pirates. Was that what it was called? Wait, hold on. Yeah. No. Not Pirates. What was it called? Oh, Black Flag. Yes. Okay. I don't know how I forgot that. I loved this game so much because you got to be a pirate. You got to have your own ship. And all that is because of the influence of this great Disney film that sort of captured what was being a pirate perfectly. Or forget if it was realistic or not, but it captured what a pirate should be in every way. And sort of like how Star Wars is the perfect sci-fi movie, or not sci-fi, like sci-fi fantasy movie, or Indiana Jones is like the perfect adventure movie. Harry Potter is like the perfect sort of magical, mystical movie. Lord of the Rings is the perfect sort of adventure fantasy movie. What else? What other? Oh, Marvel's like, I would say, great superhero movies. But this is sort of even more so than Marvel because I guess it's a much less tried genre. Same with like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. Those are all tried genres. This one's kind of different because how many pirate movies exist? Like none. And this kind of like cornered the market. I can't think of any other pirate movies. And so yeah, this movie kind of spawned an obsession in me as a child that it still exists today. I'm not gonna lie. I still find pirates really cool. And oh yeah, I was gonna say, when I do talk about the franchise like, and I do go into the other movies. I wanted to say I watched the worst, quote unquote, worst of the first four, which I don't really consider the fifth one because it came out way later and it was just bad, so forget about it. But the fourth one is rated really poorly, but I watched it and frankly, it's very underrated. It's not nearly as bad as they say. And even that one is like was like miles better than like the other shite they put out in terms of like Star Wars or Indiana Jones 5. So it's just like stick to this stuff. Just make a new original movie and I don't know, get some great talent that's really passionate, give them a budget, allow them to use like traditional filmmaking techniques, not just CGI animation, and see what happens. And do it a few times and they're bound to strike gold. And that's how you get the Walt Disney Company back. Focus on these original filmmaking and not political. And that's very important for them. All right, so this was maybe a little longer than I intended, but that was just a little thing about a movie that I really like. I didn't really want to do a plot synopsis, but it's a really fantastic film, and it's a great model for all future Disney films. All right, that's all, guys. Sussy Boy out.